Hello everyone. Good day. I'm Rika Comedja and for today's discussion I'm going to tackle about gender and diversity in the workforce. So, in 21st century, gender issues are becoming more prominent as women increasingly enter the workforce. Women are now integral part of the diverse workforce, not only supplementing family income but also pursuing careers in formerly predominantly male professions. Like race and ethnicity, gender is pivotal to initiative seeking to recognize and embrace diversity under the auspice of globalization and the need for market innovation. So in this chapter of the unit, we would be discussing on how to apply a social role framework to conceptualize gender and diversity in the workplace, explain how gender discrimination occurs, and understand contemporary issues facing women and men in the workplace and the implications for policy and practices. So as we start, we are going to conceptualize first the gender and diversity in the workforce according to its social role perspective. When we say diversity and inequality within organization, gender issues such as sex differences and similarities, division of labor, stereotypes, discrimination, and wage gap inequality merit considerable attention in framing discussions on diversity in the workforce. The study of diversity in the workforce draws from sociology and psychology, which has been primarily examined in the management literature. Similarly, the study of gender draws on psychology are including but not limited to social role theory providing a linkage between gender and diversity in the workforce. A social role theory means it seeks to explain the cause of differences and similarities in social behavior. In considering the experiences of both women and men in the workforce, it is important to distinguish the differences between the terms sex and gender. So, first, what is sex? Sex indicates the binary categories of female and male. It is refers to the physical differences between people, while the gender it is refers to social construction of differences between women and men and the social attributes and opportunities associated with being female and male. From a Western perspective, gender rooted the societal beliefs that females and males are naturally distinct and more or less opposed social beings. So, on this slide, we will be able to distinguish the differences between the term sex and gender. When we say sex, it is biological, given by birth, therefore cannot be changed. For example, only women can give birth. While in gender, it is cultural, learned through socialization, therefore can be changed. For example, women and men can work as teachers, engineers, and laborers. Central to the distinction between sex and gender, we have gender roles and gender stereotypes. Gender roles means traditional beliefs about what functions are appropriate for women and men. Our society has a set of ideas about gender roles and how we're expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based upon our assigned sex. For example, women are generally expected to dress in typical feminine ways, while men are generally expected to be strong, aggressive, and bold. While the other one is the gender stereotypes. It is deeply embedded assumptions and beliefs about the gender attributes differences from individuals or group. In the workplace, it causes a lot of misconceptions and prevent effective communication between men and women. They can even create friction and discord, which lessens companies' morale and productivity. So with that, we were done on our first topic. We proceed to the historical overview of gender and diversity in the workforce. During the pre industrialization era, the diversity of a women workforce included African slaves, immigrants workers, and convicts who were primarily men, and they were the cornerstone of the agricultural labor market. The influence of sex and gender roles and stereotypes in the workforce impacted women's participation in the agricultural labor market. The gradual presence of women in the diverse workforce began as early as 90s, reveals that women desired gender equality. Gender equality means a social order in which women and men would share the same opportunities and the same constraints, concerning full participations in both economic and domestic realms. In 1909, the first significant strike by working women, called the Uprising of 20,000, was conducted by shirtwaist makers in New York who protested low wages and long working hours. 30 years later, 1940 to 1960, the number of working women and the proportion of working wives doubled, and during World War II, large numbers of women entered the workforce, with Rosie the Riveter became a national symbol. She is the girl at the picture. Although women workers were met with resistance, caution, and struggle, the workforce progressively began to reflect all people of diverse ethnicity and race. The notion of diversity in the workforce gained momentum in 1960s during the civil rights movement as more African Americans entered the workforce. The surge of African American workers meant that their increased presence and visibility could no longer be overlooked, and there was no need to study and understand the experience and attitudes for culturally diverse workers. Diverse, according to Sony, American workplace appears to be more receptive and diversity in the workforce as they enter the 21st century through its merits are being debated everywhere. Diversifying the workforce is an effort to address unique inequities between women and men. However, women overwhelming continue to face discrimination in the workplace. Let's proceed to general discrimination. I mean, general gender discrimination in the workplace. Sip, Johnson, and Fisher define gender discrimination as gender based behaviors, policies, and actions that adversely affect a person's work while leading to unequal treatment or the creation of an intimidating environment because of one's gender. It also referred to sexism and occurs when employers make decisions such selections, evaluation, promotion, or reward allocation on the basis of individual's gender. So, prior to the enactment of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there was no legislation that prohibited gender discrimination. However, the U.S. government enacted both the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Pay Act of 1963 to eradicate deeply entrenched patterns of discrimination in employment because of race, religion, sex, and national origin. Moreover, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 amended the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for the protection of pregnant females in the workforce. Men confront gender issues such as gender stereotypes and gender discrimination in the workforce. However, research indicates that women face barriers far more often than do men. In review to empirical studies, Ngo, Foley, Wong, and Loy identified four indicators of gender discrimination in the workforce. First is the women lag behind men in salary advancement. Women still don't earn the same salaries as men for the same job status or position. In fact, woman earns just 80 cents for every dollar earned by her male peer. For example, women who were full-time or salaried worker has median weekly earnings of 10,000 compared to 20,000 con- compared with 20,000 with their male counterparts. Second, women's reward and work conditions are commonly less favorable than men's. For example, is their pay, autonomy, and authority. Third, women tend to work in dead-end jobs, resulting in lack of advancement. And last, women are less likely than are men to use authority in the workplace. Gender discrimination are occur in various settings, but it happens much of the time in employment. As part of discrimination in the workplace, we are going to define what gender wage gap and occupational sex segregation is. So let's start with gender wage gap. Gender wage gap defined as a difference in earnings received by women and men for performing similar duties or tasks. Historically, the pay gap between female and male workers was distinguished by level of education and physical prowess, which earned men more income than women. Because men in early periods acquired more education than women, and their physical strength was viewed as superior. In addressing a wage gap disparities, Congress passed the Equal Pay Act to bridge the gender wage gap between men and women in 1963. Additionally, the educational attainment of women beyond common schooling has caused a realignment of the educational qualifications between women and men. Women today have more access to higher education, which increased their opportunities for earning higher income. Although significant strides towards closing the gender wage gap have been achieved, pay inequality persists. So, on this table, we're going to identify the gender wage gap of male and female. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that in 2011, the median usually weekly earnings of full-time wage and salary workers were $549 for Hispanics, 615 for blacks, $775 for whites, and $866 for Asians. Among men, the earnings of whites, blacks, and Hispanics were 88%, 67%, and 59%, respectively, of the earnings of Asians, which is $970. The median earnings of white women, which is $703, black women $595, and Hispanic women $518 were 94, 79, and 69%, respectively, of the earnings of Asian women, which is $751. Several factors account for the pay differences between the sexes. First is the number of women in the lucrative upper level upper level position within organizations is few, and women tend to be concentrated in lower teachon position, having limited opportunities for upward mobility. Similar gaps occur to lower end wage and salary jobs. Second, women's average salaries are only a fraction of what is earned by men at all levels. Finally, the side effects of supply and demand factors further drive salary differentials between men and women. According according to Blue and Can, an increase in the demand for jobs that requires the skills is which men have more experience than women increase wage inequality. So let's proceed to the second one, which is the occupational sex segregation. It is also associated with perpetuating the gender wage gap and refers to the concentrating of women and men into particular occupations. For example, women tend to work in certain occupations, firms, and industries with other women more often than with men. Traditionally, organizations are based on norms and beliefs that are more frequently accommodating and adhered to by men than by women. Oftentimes, women are excluded from male occupations because of men's social closure around these jobs. An example of social closure is the good all boys network, since they hinders women's access and entry to prominent positions occupied by them. And now, we're going to discuss the myth of equality, glass ceiling versus glass escalator. In further exploration of occupational sex segregation, an example of the glass ceiling and glass escalator effects provides further understanding of the prevailing inequalities between women and men in the workforce. In particular, women's and men's careers opportunities in sex segregated occupational contexts continue to perpetuate the glass ceiling effect, while men benefits from the glass escalator effect. So, what is glass ceiling? Glass ceilings symbolize barriers that are based on attitudinal or organizational bias, preventing qualified women from advancing higher in their organization. And these are the glass ceiling effect according to Danziger and Eden. The glass ceiling barrier sustains and reproduces occupational inequality between the sexes, even when individuals possess similar education, skills, and competence level. According to Schlitt, synthesis of the scholarly literature concerning the pervasiveness of the glass ceiling depicts the disparities between women and men in a white and blue collar workplace in which women continue to trail behind in opportunities and advancement. According to Davis Nitzley and Calif, in comparison to men, women continue to cluster near the bottom of organizational and professional hierarchy, receive lower wages, and have limited advancement opportunity in the workplace. With the proliferation of women in the workforce in recent decades, women increasingly have acquired managerial and professional occupations in various sectors. However, in recent work by Rist and Brandt, they argue that although a woman may hold a managerial or professional position, which reflects a 25-year pattern of gain in education and job status, women in general continue to be underrepresented in high ranking jobs. While executive level positions are visible to women in the workplace, the glass ceiling phenomenon blocks their advancement and position. Further, women working in male dominated fields such as business, medicine, law enforcement, and engineering face unfavorable treatment and impediments within organizational career mobility. Women who face barriers in terms of advancement often leave to work in other organizations or start their own business. Consequently, the maladaptive nature of organizations is inclusive of women but remain more accommodating to men. Unlike women who bump up against the glass ceiling in the workforce, men ride the glass escalator to exceed the hierarchy, specifically within female dominated organizations. Let's also discuss what is glass escalator. Glass escalator refers to the promotion of men over women into management in female dominated positions such as nursing, social work, elementary school teaching, and librarianship. According to Holtin, men in this position are able to ride a glass escalator up the eternal career ladders and at the speed that their female counterparts can hardly enjoy. While women are disadvantaged in male dominated workplace, men benefit from their status in female dominated fields. In particular, the pay structure of men in the female dominated professions favors men. according to Cognard Black, asserts that gender as a major structural Stra- stratification mechanism privileges men in various setting compositions, such in the case in female-dominated lines of work in which the glass escalator hypothesis rests on notions of discriminatory process in the workplace. The glass escalator provides a dual benefits for men, whether in male-dominated or female-dominated fields. Men are accorded prestige and outpace women in advancement to position and authority and pay. A recent trend garnering scholarly interest in a large number of men entering female-dominated fields, Sally Lansai has coined this as the She coined this as the masculinization of women's work. It is the movement of men into women's occupations. It is also a process of gender transformation in which more men are present in such fields such as nurse, anesthesia, and the occupation comes to be viewed as men's work. The field of nurse anesthesia is an example wherein it has evolved from a low status women's specialty to a high status profession, where males comprise nearly half of all the employees. According to Bradley, through the transformation process, the female dominated field goes through three stages. First is the infiltration, second is the invasion, and third is takeover. While Bradley typologies provide a descriptive process, Lindsay argues that they do not fully capture why the process evolves. So that Lindsay offers four key themes that explain what draws men into these professions. First, during times of social and political change, men are inclined to enter women's work for security or because they have few other alternatives. Second, factor identified in the masculinization of work is pay and opportunity to move up the career ladder quickly. Third, change in work conditions are third factor influencing the masculinization of an occupation. And fourth, a related factor in the movement of men into women's job is the technological change. Once a job becomes more technically oriented, men tend to gain a foothold. And these four factors illuminate the gradual masculinization of women's work and have implications about the maintenance and reinforcement of the glass escalator. Furthermore, what is yet to be studied in this area of inquiry is the socializing influence female dominated fields over time may have on men. The myth of quality suggests that discrimination does not exist. However, it coexists with sexual harassment in the workplace. So now we're going to discuss the contemporary issues for women and men in workplace. In recent years, women employment has multiplied considerably. Sociologists attribute the increased proportion of women in the workforce due to the decline in men's wages. The exodus of women from the home and their entry into the workforce has caused a shift in the traditional role of women and men at work and home. These changes introduce different gender issues to the global workforce. The presence of dual couple earners, female breadwinners, and the younger generations X and Y in the workforce has fueled female and male workers' request for more autonomy over their work responsibilities in order to better accommodate their personal lives. The introduction of work life balance initiatives was a response to employees' requests. So let's discuss what is work life balance and its initiatives. We are but first we are going to define what is work life balance. Work life balance is equilibrium between the amount of time and effort individuals commit to work and non-work related activities. The way in which individuals balance their work and non work lives is a central issue in business practices and in academic inquiry, particularly in disciplines such as organizational studies, gender studies, and sociological perspectives. Now, we're going to discuss what is work-life balance initiatives. One way in which organizations address contemporary issues in true work-life balance initiatives. The fundamental aim of work life balance practice and policies is to enable employees to manage work and caregiving. Such initiatives consist primarily of flexible working practices and family friendly policies. Although good prac- practice demonstrate flexibility as being considerate of all workers, including those without caregiver responsibilities. So the first initiative is the caregiving options. Finding adequate care for children while parents work in a problem faced by many employed women and men and is considered as primary reason employees need work-life balance program. Employees who cannot balance the demands of work with available childcare are often disciplined or fired. A salient role of work-life balance strategies is to focus on ways that working mothers and fathers can care for their children while maintaining employment. Some organizations provide subsidized on-site childcare centers for employees. Caring obligations extend beyond children and often include aging parents and ailing family members. A perspective considered less in literature is that men are finding new opportunities to increase involvement with their families, thus shifting the narrow gender role of the male as primary wage earner and also changing is the increase in stay-at-home fathers. According to Perron, as parents adapt to new careers and problems can occur because the perceived social respect and regard of a stay-at-home fathers was low while the employed mothers perceived was high that may be attributed to women gaining social respect and regard by taking on the traditional male breadwinner role. Second is the flexible schedule options. To assist employees with a balance between their personal and work lives, some companies make available flexible work schedule arrangements, which include flex time options, typically offering employees some choice on arrival and departure times. One of these is the compressed work week is another flexible work choice and usually consists of 10-hour days. Job sharing arrangement involve two employees who share the responsibilities of one position. Second, the benefit of this arrangement is that one employee might work during the morning and the other in the afternoon. Also, they have part-time jobs are another means of flexible scheduling. Many women with children secure part-time rather than full-time jobs because they often have the major responsibility for children and may not wish to or might be unable to work traditional, less flexible, and sometimes excessive work hours and schedules. Unfortunately, part time jobs are customarily accompanied by low pay, no benefits, no security, limited autonomy, and virtually no opportunities for advancement. And the third initiatives are the mommy truck. Some organizations have created the mommy truck position with the idea of providing opportunity for working mothers to devote time to both careers and families. However, critics of the initiative describe it as a punitive because working mothers are forced to choose between developing a career or having a family and a career. If women select the latter choice, then they are relegated to a career path that is considered low status, excluding women from important projects. They also receive lower pay and generally feel ignored by their busier, career oriented male or female counterparts. The fourth initiative is the paternity leave. If the mother have maternity leave, the father also have paternity leave. Paternity leave is the another work-life balance benefit and refers to a period of time that the father is legally allowed to be away from his job to spend time with his child. According to Halverson, father who wants to take paternity leave or time away from work to care for children often experience difficulty under the provision of the Family and Medical Leave Act. Men use work life balance initiatives much less than women do. Such a claim reinforces gender discrimination in the workplace, which not only impacts women but men also. Like women who have battled maternity related issues, men also have must advocate for family friendly workplace policies, which Hurtin describes as designed to minimize the impact of work on family life. As the work life literature suggests, a number of traditional gender role expectations persist despite the shift in who becomes the primary earner in the family. And for the last initiative, we have the technology option. It is the valuable to some women and men who want to strike a balance between family and work responsibilities. Telecommuni- Telecommuting permits employees to work from home at a personal computer that is linked to their employer's computer system and includes other innovations to perform business away from the traditional office, such as laptops, wireless phones, and internet access to email. Today, multi-generational workforce presents varied work styles and workers' preference. For instance, Generation X workers prefer to use technology when it offers them less stringent work hours to allow for greater work-life balance, while the Generation Y workers are the first generation born into a technologically based world and generally favor instant messaging, text messaging, and emails rather than having a face-to-face conversation or using the telephone. So, for our last topic, we are going to discuss the limitation of work life balance strategies. Although work life balance strategies aim to improve the relationship between the work and personal lives of employees, they can make work intense and perpetuate stereotypes of ideal workers who are employees unencumbered by family or other non working responsibilities. Work life balance initiatives as part of the core employment system to enhance organizational effectiveness, according to COSIC. Work life initiatives become more mainstreams, a right and not a privilege limited to those individuals most in the need of caregiving assistance. They will continue to be marginalized. According to Stone, concurs with Cosick's sociological argument and asserts until more men themselves take advantage of workplace policies or at least as senior managers permit and do not punish those who do, reduced hour and flexible accommodations are likely to remain stigmatized and underutilized in a never-ending chase the tail scenario that rebounds to women's dis, to women's disadvantage. And according to Hewlett, tempers both Cosick and Stone's argument with an economic explanation, which asserts that corporations will implement flexible policies that accommodate working mothers only when they are convinced that such policies are in their economic interest to do so. And women and men continue to grapple that their work and personal demands. Although some progressive organizations are implementing work-life balance practices, additional accommodations are essentials to better address the contemporary roles of women and men. The researchers argue that organizations and scholars need to frame work life balance initiatives as part of the core employment system to enhance organizational effectiveness rather than strategies to support disadvantaged non ideal workers, such as those who use the system because they not have an income to employ outside help. So That's all for gender and diversity in the workforce. I hope you learned something informative in my presentation for today. Thank you for listening.